The rain hammered TechFlow Solutions' empty parking lot. Most employees had fled the quarterly celebration hours ago, but Elena Richards, the CEO who commanded boardrooms with steel precision, sat slumped on the front steps. Her designer suit soaked through, mascara streaking black lines down her cheeks. Mercedes keys scattered on wet concrete beside her. Mike Thompson, the night janitor, invisible to everyone, watched through glass doors, his weathered clipboard tucked under one arm. This woman who never acknowledged his existence was completely helpless. He stepped into the storm. "Ma'am, I can give you a ride home." She looked up with desperate eyes and nodded. During that short drive home, neither of them could have predicted how a simple act of kindness would unravel everything they thought they knew about each other, or how 4 words from Elena the next morning would change Mike's life forever. The next Monday morning arrived with crisp October air that made everything feel possible. Mike Thompson stood in his tiny kitchen, brewing coffee in a mug decorated with a faded photo of his late wife Sarah and their son Dylan. The apartment was small but spotless, every surface organized with the same precision he brought to his night shift at TechFlow. Dylan sat at their second-hand table, already awake and sketching what looked like a complex diagram on the back of yesterday's newspaper. At 10 years old, the boy had inherited his father's gift for seeing patterns where others saw chaos. "Dad, why do the delivery trucks always get stuck at the loading dock?" Dylan asked without looking up from his drawing. His pencil moved in quick, confident strokes, creating what appeared to be a redesigned traffic flow system. Mike smiled as he watched his son work, remembering how Sarah used to say Dylan had inherited the best of both his parents, her artistic eye and Mike's analytical mind. The boy's innocent questions stirred something in Mike's chest, a familiar ache for the work he used to do before life forced him to choose survival over passion. "Sometimes things aren't designed to work together," Mike replied gently, ruffling Dylan's dark hair. He glanced at the clock. Time to get Dylan ready for school before catching a few hours of sleep himself. The night shift at TechFlow paid the bills and provided the health insurance they desperately needed, but it meant Mike lived in a constant state of exhaustion, stealing moments of rest between his responsibilities as a father and his work as the invisible man who cleaned up after everyone else. Mike's phone buzzed with a text from the school principal. Dylan had been sent to the office again, this time for trying to reorganize the lunch line to reduce wait times. He had drawn a detailed diagram showing how students could move more efficiently through the cafeteria, complete with timing calculations and bottleneck analysis. The principal's message was polite but firm. Perhaps Dylan should focus on being a child instead of trying to solve institutional problems. Mike sighed, knowing this would not be the last time his son's brilliant mind would clash with a world that was not ready for his insights. As Mike drove Dylan to school in their aging Honda Civic, he could not shake the memory of Elena Richards sitting helpless in the rain. He had seen her around the office for months, always perfectly composed, always in control. But that night had revealed something different, a vulnerability that reminded him why he had chosen to help rather than simply walk away. The drive to her upscale apartment complex had been quiet, but Mike had noticed things. The way she organized her thoughts even while intoxicated. How she automatically reached for her phone to check messages, even in her compromised state. The practiced way she seemed to expect to handle everything alone. At TechFlow Solutions, the morning buzz carried the usual energy of a post-party Monday. Elena Richards arrived sharp, her composure restored, designer heels clicking against the marble lobby floor. Employees nodded respectfully as she passed, some still nursing hangovers from the celebration. Brad Morrison, the chief operating officer, intercepted her near the elevators with his usual collection of weekend concerns and operational complaints. At 40, Brad had been with the company for 8 years and represented the old guard that had watched Elena's meteoric rise to CEO with barely concealed skepticism. "Elena, we need to discuss the logistics inefficiencies that came up in last week's reports," Brad said. His voice carried the weight of someone who believed problems should be solved through proper channels in established hierarchies. He carried a thick folder of documentation, each page meticulously organized according to corporate protocols. "The delivery delays are costing us approximately 15% over budget this quarter, and I think we need to engage a consulting firm to conduct a comprehensive analysis." His tone suggested this was the only reasonable course of action, delivered with the confidence of someone who had never questioned whether the existing systems might be fundamentally flawed. Elena nodded absently, but her mind wandered to the man who had driven her home in the rain, Mike Thompson. She had looked him up in the employee directory Sunday morning. Night shift facilities maintenance, employed for 18 months, clean record, no disciplinary issues. What struck her was not the basic information, but what was missing. No one had bothered to document his previous experience, his capabilities, or anything beyond his current job title. He was invisible in the system, just another name on the facility's roster, despite the fact that he had demonstrated more genuine concern for her well-being than most of her executive team had shown in months. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and strategic discussions, but Elena found herself distracted by questions she could not shake. How had Mike known exactly how to handle her car's manual transmission? Why had he organized her scattered mail with such efficiency? Most puzzling of all, why had she felt safer with him than with people who had known her for years? By lunchtime, she had made a decision that would have surprised anyone who knew her reputation for calculated, data-driven choices. She picked up her phone and dialed the facilities department. "Could you ask Mike Thompson to come to my office when he arrives for his shift tonight?" she asked the facility supervisor, keeping her voice professionally neutral. "I would like to discuss something with him." The supervisor seemed surprised. Executives rarely requested meetings with night shift janitors, but agreed to pass along the message. Elena spent the rest of the day wondering if she was making a mistake, if her gratitude was clouding her judgment, or if she was about to discover something that would justify the instinct that had been nagging at her since that night. That evening, Mike received the message with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. In 18 months of emptying trash bins and mopping floors, he had never been summoned to the executive level for anything other than standard maintenance requests. He changed into his cleanest uniform and made sure his weathered black clipboard was tucked securely in his pocket, a habit from his previous life that he had never been able to break. The clipboard contained months of observations about TechFlow's operations, notes he had never intended anyone to see, patterns he had noticed during his silent hours walking through the company's halls. Elena's office reflected her personality. Minimalist, efficient, everything in its place. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Oakwood's modest skyline, while awards and achievements lined the walls in neat rows. Mike knocked softly and entered when she called out, feeling completely out of place among the polished furniture and corporate artwork. Elena gestured for him to sit in one of the leather chairs facing her desk, a gesture that seemed to acknowledge him as more than just the help. The contrast between her composed professional demeanor and the vulnerable woman he had helped that night was striking. "Mike, I wanted to thank you properly for that evening," Elena began, her voice carrying a warmth that her employees rarely heard. "Your kindness meant more than you probably realize." She paused, studying his face, noting the intelligence in his eyes that seemed at odds with his humble uniform. "I'm curious about something, though. When you helped me organize my apartment that night, you seemed to know exactly what you were doing. The way you arranged my mail, optimized my kitchen setup, even adjusted my thermostat settings. That is not typical janitor training." Mike shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unsure how much to reveal. "I just like things to work efficiently, ma'am. Old habits, I guess." He pulled out his clipboard without thinking, then quickly tried to put it away. But Elena had already noticed the detailed notes visible on the top page. Her eyebrows raised slightly as she caught glimpses of what appeared to be workflow diagrams and efficiency calculations, far more sophisticated than anything she would expect from facilities maintenance documentation. "May I see that?" Elena asked gently, extending her hand toward the clipboard. Mike hesitated for a long moment before handing it over, knowing that this simple gesture might change everything. Elena flipped through pages of meticulous observations about TechFlow's operations, delivery bottlenecks at the loading dock, supplier coordination issues, workflow problems that were costing the company thousands of dollars monthly. The analysis was sophisticated, specific, and actionable. More importantly, it identified problems that had been plaguing the company for months, but had not been properly diagnosed by the management team. Mike, this level of analysis does not come from casual observation, Elena said slowly, her voice filled with growing amazement. Where did you learn to see operations this way? The question hung in the air between them, and Mike realized there was no point in hiding the truth any longer. He had been discovered, and Elena deserved an honest answer. He took a deep breath and began to explain about his previous life, about Memphis Freight Corporation and the career he had lost when family tragedy forced him to make impossible choices. I supervised freight operations for Memphis Freight Corp for 8 years, Mike said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had given up everything that defined him professionally. Regional distribution for over 150 retail clients. When my wife Sarah was diagnosed with breast cancer, I took extended leave to care for her and Dylan. The company downsized during the recession, and my position was eliminated while I was away. He paused. The pain of those memories was still fresh despite the time that had passed. Single father with a sick child, I needed stable work with health benefits. Night shift here meant I could be home when Dylan needed me. Elena felt something shift in her understanding of the man sitting across from her desk. This was not a charity case or random act of kindness. This was recognizing wasted potential. Mike, our logistics costs are running 15% over budget this quarter. The efficiency problems you have identified in your notes are exactly what we have been struggling to solve. Brad Morrison has been pushing to hire external consultants. But you are telling me we have the expertise we need right here. Ma'am, I appreciate the confidence, but I am not sure it would be appropriate, Mike replied, his voice carrying the caution of a man who had learned to manage expectations carefully. Chain of command exists for good reasons. I am sure Mr. Morrison has solid plans for addressing these issues through proper channels. But even as he spoke the words, Elena could see the spark of interest in his eyes. The unmistakable look of someone who missed using his mind for more than just routine maintenance tasks. Elena made a decision that would either validate her instincts or damage her credibility as a leader. Mike, I want to offer you a position that matches your capabilities. Operations consultant, working directly with our logistics team to implement the efficiency improvements you have identified. You would keep your current position for now, but take on additional responsibilities that actually use your expertise. She watched his face carefully, noting the mix of hope and fear that had crossed his features. The question is, are you ready to step out of the shadows and show this company what you can really do? Mike thought about Dylan, about stability, about the risk of changing a situation that worked even if it did not fulfill him. But he also thought about the problems he saw every night, the inefficiencies that could be fixed with the right approach, the satisfaction of using his mind for something meaningful again. I need to think about this, ma'am. Dylan's stability has to be my first priority. Elena nodded understandingly, but something in her expression suggested she already knew what his answer would be. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Brad Morrison had heard through the office grapevine about Elena's late meeting with a facilities worker, and his concerns went beyond simple protocol violations. At 40, Brad represented the establishment that had built TechFlow into a successful company through traditional methods and proven hierarchies. The idea of promoting a janitor to operations consultant struck him as not just irregular, but potentially damaging to company culture and employee morale. Elena, you are talking about promoting the night janitor. Brad's voice carried a mixture of disbelief and concern as he confronted her in her office early that morning. This is highly irregular. What message does this send to employees who have worked their way up through proper channels? What about the staff who have been here for years, following established procedures and earning their positions through documented achievements? His folder of protocols and procedure manuals seemed to grow heavier as he spoke, representing the weight of institutional memory and corporate structure. Mike Thompson has relevant experience and insights we need, Elena replied firmly. But she could see Brad's point about optics and precedent. Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected sources. Fresh perspectives can solve problems that conventional thinking has missed. She found herself defending a decision that felt right instinctively, but was difficult to justify within traditional corporate frameworks. The tension in the room reflected a fundamental clash between innovation and institutional stability. Brad's concerns were not entirely unreasonable, and they quickly spread beyond his office through the informal networks that existed in every workplace. Whispers began circulating among the staff. Some employees were genuinely curious about the mysterious janitor who had apparently caught the CEO's attention. Others were more skeptical, questioning whether Elena's judgment might be compromised by factors beyond pure business considerations. The rumor mill, fed by half-truths and speculation, began generating stories that had little connection to reality, but everything to do with human nature's tendency to create drama where none existed. Did you hear? Elena drove home with the janitor after the party, became Elena and the janitor left the party together. Simple professional consideration morphed into suggestions of inappropriate relationships. Brad found himself fielding questions from other managers about Elena's recent decision-making patterns, her unconventional approaches to staffing issues, and whether the board of directors should be concerned about judgment calls that seemed to prioritize personal connections over established procedures. The whispers took on lives of their own, spreading through break rooms and coffee conversations like wildfire. Elena became aware of the whispers when she noticed the subtle changes in how people interacted with her, the slightly longer pauses before responses, the careful way colleagues phrased questions about her recent staffing decisions, the uncomfortable silence that followed her entries into rooms where conversations had been flowing freely moments before. Mike, meanwhile, had made his decision. He had sat down with Dylan to explain the opportunity Elena had offered. His son's response was characteristically insightful. "Dad, you always tell me to use my talents to help people. Why should this be different just because some people might not understand?" The boy's simple wisdom cut through Mike's complicated fears about stability and risk, reminding him that sometimes the greatest danger was in playing it too safe. Mike called Elena to accept her offer. "Ma'am, I have thought about your proposal and I would like to accept the consulting position. Dylan reminded me that talents are meant to be used, not hidden." Elena felt a surge of satisfaction that had nothing to do with winning and everything to do with recognizing potential that others had missed. But she also knew the real challenges were just beginning. Office politics were about to become much more complicated. Elena's announcement of Mike's new role as operations consultant sent shockwaves through TechFlow's management structure. Brad Morrison's opposition became more vocal and more public, couched in terms of corporate responsibility and proper procedure. "This promotion sets a dangerous precedent," he argued in management meetings. "What is next? Promoting cafeteria staff to executive positions? There are established procedures, qualification requirements, and experience standards that exist for good reasons." The resistance was not limited to Brad's concerns about protocol. Other managers began questioning Elena's recent decision-making patterns, wondering if her judgment was being influenced by factors beyond pure business considerations. Some employees who had been with the company for years felt overlooked and undervalued, wondering why their steady performance and institutional knowledge seemed less important than whatever mysterious qualities the janitor possessed. The promotion became a symbol of larger tensions between innovation and tradition, between recognizing hidden talent and respecting established hierarchies. Elena found herself defending decisions that felt obviously right to her, but appeared questionable to others who lacked the context of her interactions with Mike. She could not explain the sophisticated analysis in his notebook without violating his privacy, or describe the insights he had shared without making it seem like she was playing favorites based on personal rather than professional factors. The whispered suggestions of inappropriate relationships made rational discussion even more difficult, creating an atmosphere where every defense of Mike's qualifications seemed to confirm suspicions about ulterior motives. Mike, for his part, became acutely aware of the scrutiny his new position attracted. Colleagues who had never spoken to him before suddenly found reasons to engage in conversations that felt more like interrogations than friendly workplace interactions. "So, Mike, how exactly did you catch Elena's attention?" became a question he heard multiple times daily, delivered with various degrees of subtlety and suspicion. He found himself walking a tightrope between proving his worth and avoiding actions that might feed the rumor mill. The situation reached a crisis point when board member Robert Hayes called Elena with concerns that had been raised by multiple department heads. "Elena, there are questions about your recent staffing decisions that go beyond the normal operational issues. Some people are suggesting that personal considerations might be influencing professional judgment. The board supports innovative thinking, but we need to ensure that decisions are being made for the right reasons." Elena realized that Mike would need to prove himself publicly and definitively in a way that would silence critics and demonstrate beyond doubt that his promotion was based on merit rather than favoritism. She made a decision that was either brilliant or career-ending. She would give Mike the platform to show the entire company what he was capable of, letting his work speak louder than any rumors or speculation. The risks were enormous, but so was the potential reward of validating her faith in hidden talent. Mike, I'm going to ask something difficult of you, Elena said during a private meeting. I want you to present your operational efficiency plan to the entire company next week. Not just management, not just the logistics team, but everyone. It is the only way to prove that your promotion was about your capabilities, not about office politics or personal relationships. She watched his face carefully, knowing she was asking him to step completely out of his comfort zone and into a spotlight that could either vindicate or destroy both of their reputations. Mike understood the stakes immediately. This was not just about his career prospects or Elena's judgment. It was about proving that talent existed in unexpected places, that solutions could come from sources that traditional thinking would never consider. Ma'am, I am not sure I am qualified for company-wide presentations. I have never spoken to groups larger than my old freight team. But even as he voiced his concerns, Elena could see the determination building in his eyes, the recognition that this moment would define not just his future, but his son's understanding of what was possible when people were willing to take risks for the right reasons. Mike, you are the most qualified person I know to solve our logistics problems, Elena replied with conviction that surprised them both. The question is not whether you have the expertise. Your notebook proves that beyond doubt. The question is whether you are ready to show everyone what you have been seeing all along. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle between them. This is your chance to prove that merit matters more than assumptions, that solutions can come from anywhere if we are willing to look. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Mike spent Saturday and Sunday transforming his handwritten observations into a professional presentation, with Elena providing guidance on corporate communication styles and boardroom dynamics. Dylan helped by asking innocent questions that forced his father to explain complex concepts in simple terms, unknowingly preparing Mike for the challenge of making logistics efficiency understandable to people who had never worked in operations. Dad, this is really good, Dylan said with the earnest sincerity that only children possess. It is like you took all the broken things and showed people how to fix them. The boy's simple observation reminded Mike that his work had always been about solving problems, about making systems work better for everyone involved. The presentation was not about proving himself to critics. It was about helping a company function more efficiently. The main conference room at TechFlow had been set up for company-wide attendance, with video conferencing for satellite offices and overflow seating in adjacent rooms. Elena arrived early to check the technical setup, her professional confidence masking the personal investment she had in Mike's success. Brad Morrison was already there, his expression suggesting skepticism mixed with genuine curiosity about what the night janitor might have to offer. As employees filed into the conference room, the atmosphere carried an electric tension that had nothing to do with normal business presentations. Everyone knew this was about more than operational efficiency. It was about whether unconventional thinking could triumph over institutional skepticism, whether hidden talent would be recognized or dismissed, whether Elena's leadership would be validated or questioned. Mike entered wearing a clean button-down shirt that Elena had suggested, but he still carried his weathered black clipboard alongside the new presentation materials, a symbol of staying true to his roots while embracing new possibilities. Elena's introduction was deliberately understated. Today, Mike Thompson will present an operational analysis that addresses the logistics challenges we have been facing this quarter. I ask everyone to listen with open minds and judge the content based on its merit. She stepped back, giving Mike the floor and the opportunity to either vindicate her faith in him or confirm the doubts of his critics. The room fell silent with the kind of attention that could either launch careers or end them. Mike began quietly, methodically, the way he approached every problem he had ever solved. I started noticing patterns in our delivery operations that seemed inefficient. Small things at first, trucks waiting too long at loading docks, suppliers arriving at inconvenient times. inventory moving through unnecessary steps. His voice grew stronger as he found his rhythm, the natural confidence of someone who understood his subject matter beginning to overcome his nervousness about public speaking. The initial skepticism in the room, evident in crossed arms, checking of phones, and whispered conversations, began to fade as Mike's analysis unfolded. He presented detailed data about current inefficiencies, identifying specific bottlenecks that were costing the company money and time. His workflow diagrams showed problems that everyone recognized, but no one had properly diagnosed. The loading dock delays that frustrated drivers, the supplier coordination issues that created inventory shortages, the routing problems that added unnecessary miles to delivery schedules, all laid out with precision and clarity. But the real transformation in the room's atmosphere came when Mike began presenting solutions. His recommendations were not theoretical or abstract. They were practical, actionable, and immediately implementable. Route optimization that could reduce delivery times by 20%, supplier scheduling, coordination that would eliminate the bottlenecks that had plagued operations for months, inventory management improvements that would reduce waste while ensuring adequate stock levels. Each suggestion was backed by specific data and realistic timelines for implementation. The sophistication of Mike's analysis began to sink in as he moved through projected cost savings, implementation strategies, and performance metrics. This was not casual observation or lucky guessing. This was professional-grade logistics expertise applied to problems that had resisted solution through conventional approaches. Board member Robert Hayes leaned forward in his chair, his expression shifting from polite attention to genuine interest. Other employees stopped checking their phones and began taking notes, recognizing that they were witnessing something unexpected and valuable. When Mike presented his projected savings of $200,000 annually, the room fell completely silent. The figure was not inflated or optimistic. It was based on conservative estimates and realistic assumptions about implementation timelines. Brad Morrison, who had been prepared to find flaws in whatever amateur analysis the janitor might present, found himself grudgingly impressed by the thoroughness and professionalism of the work. This was not the product of enthusiasm or good intentions. This was expertise applied to real problems with measurable results. The question and answer session that followed revealed the full extent of Mike's knowledge. "How did you identify these specific inefficiency patterns?" asked a logistics coordinator who had been struggling with the same problems for months. Mike's answer demonstrated understanding not just of TechFlow's operations, but of industry best practices and optimization principles that came from years of professional experience. "What is your background in supply chain management?" asked another employee. Mike's honest explanation of his previous career began to make sense of capabilities that had seemed impossible to explain. As the presentation concluded, the atmosphere in the room had completely changed. The skepticism and whispered doubts had been replaced by recognition and respect. Mike's expertise was undeniable. His solutions were practical, and his promotion was clearly based on merit rather than favoritism. Elena felt a surge of vindication that went beyond personal satisfaction. She had been right about recognizing hidden talent, about looking beyond job titles and conventional assumptions to find the expertise the company actually needed. Brad Morrison was the first to stand when Mike finished, his action carrying symbolic weight that was not lost on anyone in the room. "Mike, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice carrying the humility of someone who had realized the error of his assumptions. "I let preconceptions about positions and backgrounds cloud my judgment about your capabilities. This analysis is exactly what we need, and I am grateful Elena had the vision to recognize your potential." His words effectively ended any lingering questions about Mike's qualifications or Elena's decision-making. The spontaneous applause that followed was not polite corporate courtesy. It was genuine appreciation for work that would make everyone's job easier and the company more successful. Comments from the audience reflected the shift in perception. Why did we not think to ask maintenance staff about operational efficiency before? This makes perfect sense now that someone has explained it clearly. Best presentation I have seen in years. The recognition was immediate and unanimous, validating Elena's faith in merit-based decision-making. As employees filed out of the conference room, many stopped to thank Mike personally for insights that would improve their daily work experience. The logistics coordinator, who had struggled with delivery delays, shook his hand and said, "I have been fighting these problems for 2 years. Now I understand why my solutions were not working." The warehouse supervisor mentioned that Mike's recommendations addressed frustrations she had been feeling but could not articulate. The transformation from invisible janitor to valued colleague was complete and irreversible. Elena and Mike found themselves alone in the conference room after the crowd dispersed, surrounded by the materials and equipment of a presentation that had changed both of their careers. "How do you feel?" Elena asked, genuinely curious about his experience of stepping so completely out of his comfort zone. Mike looked down at his old clipboard, then at the presentation materials, symbolically representing the journey from hidden potential to recognized expertise. "Grateful," Mike replied simply, "nervous about living up to expectations, but grateful for the chance to use my mind for something meaningful again." He paused, considering the magnitude of what had just happened. "Dylan will be proud. He has always asked why I did not use my talents to help people solve problems. Now I can tell him I am." Alona smiled, recognizing that the real victory was not just professional recognition, but personal fulfillment and the restoration of dignity that came from being valued for one's capabilities rather than circumstances. TechFlow Solutions had transformed its operational efficiency beyond anyone's expectations. Mike's recommendations had been implemented systematically, resulting in cost savings that exceeded projections and operational improvements that made everyone's work easier and more effective. The loading dock delays that had frustrated drivers were eliminated through better scheduling coordination. Supplier relationships improved through clearer communication and realistic timing expectations. Delivery routes were optimized to reduce costs while improving service quality. Mike's new office was located next to the operations center, symbolically bridging the gap between management decisions and floor-level implementation. He still made evening walks through the facility, but now it was as a consultant checking on implementation progress, rather than as an invisible janitor going unnoticed by the people whose work he was supporting. His transformation had inspired other employees to share insights and suggestions that might have remained hidden under traditional hierarchical structures. The morning routine in the Thompson household had evolved as dramatically as Mike's professional life. Dylan still woke up early to work on his diagrams and system improvements, but now his father's work provided real-world validation for the boy's analytical interests. "Dad, kids at school think it is cool that you went from janitor to consultant," Dylan mentioned over breakfast one morning. His tone suggested genuine pride in his father's accomplishment. "What do you think is the coolest part?" Mike asked, genuinely curious about his son's perspective on the changes in their lives. Dylan considered the question seriously, the way he approached most problems, before answering with the insight that had consistently surprised and impressed his father. "I think the coolest part is that you never stopped seeing ways to help people, even when they could not see what you were doing." Elena's leadership style had been permanently influenced by her experience with Mike's hidden potential. She implemented an operational insight program that encouraged suggestions from employees at every level of the organization. Recognizing that solutions often came from people who were closest to actual problems rather than those with the highest titles, the program resulted in numerous efficiency improvements and cost savings. But more importantly, it created a culture where expertise was valued regardless of its source. The relationship between Elena and Mike had settled into a collegial friendship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to organizational excellence. Their coffee meetings were now professional consultations about operational improvements and strategic planning, with no romantic undertones but genuine appreciation for each other's perspectives and capabilities. Elena had learned to listen more carefully to insights from unexpected sources, while Mike had regained confidence in his professional judgment and analytical abilities. Brad Morrison's evolution was perhaps the most significant unexpected outcome of the entire situation. His initial resistance to Mike's promotion had been replaced by enthusiastic support and recognition that merit-based decision-making produced better results than rigid adherence to traditional hierarchies. He became Mike's strongest advocate, implementing new hiring practices that emphasized experience and capability over credentials and conventional backgrounds. His transformation demonstrated that even institutional skepticism could evolve when confronted with undeniable results. The impact of Mike's success spread beyond TechFlow Solutions into the broader Oakwood community. Local business organizations invited him to speak about operational efficiency and recognizing hidden talent within existing workforce structures. The community college asked him to develop a seminar about practical logistics management for adult learners who were changing careers or upgrading skills. His story became an example of how second chances and merit-based recognition could benefit both individuals and organizations. Mike's old clipboard had been framed and hung in his new office with a small plaque reading, "Every problem has a solution waiting to be seen." The artifact served as a reminder that expertise could develop in unexpected places and that observation and analysis were valuable regardless of the observer's official title or recognized status. During quiet moments, Mike would look at the framed clipboard and remember the months of invisible work that had led to visible recognition. On weekends, Mike began mentoring Dylan's interest in systems analysis and problem solving, helping his son understand that analytical thinking could be applied to challenges at every level of society. Dylan's bedroom wall was now covered with diagrams of improved traffic flow patterns for their neighborhood, more efficient layouts for the school cafeteria, and optimization strategies for the local library's book checkout process. The boy's natural talent for seeing solutions was being nurtured and encouraged rather than dismissed as inappropriate precocity. During his routine facility walkthrough, Mike encountered Maria Gonzalez, the new night janitor who had been hired to replace him in facilities maintenance. She was organizing the supply room with impressive efficiency, implementing improvements that Mike immediately recognized as intelligent and thoughtful. He stopped to observe her work, remembering his own invisible months of seeing problems that no one else noticed or acknowledged. "That is a very effective organizational system," Mike commented, genuinely impressed by Maria's approach to inventory management. "Have you noticed any other operational inefficiencies during your shifts that might be worth documenting?" Maria looked up with surprise, clearly not expecting a consultant to ask for her observations about company operations. "You are asking me for my opinion?" she replied, her voice carrying the uncertainty of someone unaccustomed to being valued for her insights. "The people who actually do the work usually see the problems first," Mike explained, handing her his business card. "Experience and observation matter more than job titles when it comes to understanding how systems really function. If you notice patterns or opportunities for improvement, I would appreciate hearing about them." Maria took the card with an expression that mixed surprise with growing confidence, recognizing that her expertise might be valued even if her position seemed humble. Elena often worked late in her office, and from her window she could see Mike's evening consultations with employees throughout the facility. His transformation from invisible janitor to recognized expert had created ripple effects that extended far beyond operational efficiency improvements. He had become a symbol of merit-based recognition and hidden potential, inspiring other employees to share insights and take initiative in ways that strengthened the entire organization. During one of their regular coffee meetings, Elena reflected on how much her understanding of leadership had evolved since that rainy night. "I have learned more about recognizing talent from working with you than from any executive training program," she told Mike. Her voice carried genuine appreciation for lessons that could not be taught in business schools. "Sometimes the most valuable insights come from people who have been overlooked by conventional thinking." Mike's response reflected the humility that had characterized his approach throughout his journey from facilities worker to operations consultant. "I think the real skill is being willing to listen to perspectives that do not fit expected patterns. You created the opportunity for hidden expertise to become visible. That takes courage as much as insight." Their conversation captured the essence of what had made their collaboration successful: a mutual respect for different forms of expertise and willingness to challenge assumptions about where valuable insights might originate. The story of Mike Thompson and Elena Richards had become part of TechFlow Solutions' corporate culture, representing the company's commitment to merit-based recognition and innovative problem-solving. New employee orientation included discussion of how operational insights could come from any level of the organization and how management's willingness to listen to unconventional sources had produced measurable improvements in efficiency and cost savings. The narrative served as both inspiration and practical guidance for fostering inclusive approaches to organizational improvement. Dylan's latest project was a detailed analysis of his school's traffic flow problems during pickup and drop-off times, complete with timing studies and alternative routing suggestions. When Mike reviewed his son's work, He was struck by the sophistication of the boy's thinking and the practical value of his recommendations. "Dad, should I show this to the principal, or would that just get me in trouble again?" Dylan asked, remembering previous occasions when his problem-solving enthusiasm had been interpreted as disruptive behavior. "Let us refine it a little more, then approach the principal together," Mike replied, recognizing an opportunity to teach his son about presenting solutions in ways that would be received positively rather than dismissed as childish interference. Good ideas need good presentation to be accepted, and timing matters as much as content when you are trying to help people solve problems. The conversation represented a new chapter in Dylan's education about using his analytical gifts constructively and effectively. The changes at TechFlow Solutions had become the new normal rather than experimental innovations. Mike's efficiency improvements were generating consistent cost savings and operational improvements that validated Elena's decision to promote him based on capability rather than conventional qualifications. The initial resistance and rumors had been replaced by recognition and respect, with Mike's expertise now considered essential to the company's continued success and growth. The evening ritual of Mike's facility walkthrough had evolved into collaborative consultations with employees throughout the organization. His transformation from invisible maintenance worker to valued advisor had created a culture where expertise was recognized regardless of its source, where solutions were evaluated based on merit rather than the credentials of their originators. The clipboard that had once symbolized hidden potential now represented the power of observation, analysis, and willingness to see beyond surface appearances. Elena Richards looked out her office window at the Oakwood skyline, reflecting on a journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night and had evolved into a fundamental transformation of how her company recognized and utilized talent. The 4 words she had spoken to Mike the morning after he drove her home, "We need to talk," had initiated changes that neither of them could have predicted, but both now recognized as inevitable once merit was allowed to triumph over assumption. The story concluded not with dramatic transformation, but with quiet satisfaction of dignity restored, potential recognized, and community strengthened through seeing beyond surface assumptions. Mike's success had created a template for recognizing hidden expertise throughout the organization, while Elena's leadership had demonstrated that courage to challenge conventional thinking could produce benefits far beyond individual advancement. Mike arrived at TechFlow to find a handwritten note on his desk from Maria Gonzalez. She had documented several operational inefficiencies she had observed during her night shifts, complete with timing studies and potential solutions that demonstrated the same analytical thinking Mike had once applied to his own invisible observations. Her insights about energy usage patterns and security protocol improvements were sophisticated and immediately actionable, proving that expertise continued to exist in unexpected places throughout the organization. Mike scheduled a meeting with Elena to discuss Maria's recommendations, recognizing an opportunity to continue the cycle of talent recognition that had transformed his own career. "It looks like we have another hidden expert in our facilities department," he told Elena, sharing Maria's documentation with the same enthusiasm Elena had once shown for his own analytical work. The conversation represented the institutionalization of merit-based recognition, ensuring that Mike's experience would not remain unique, but would become part of TechFlow's ongoing approach to organizational development. Elena's response reflected how completely her leadership philosophy had evolved since that night when she had first encountered Mike's unexpected capabilities. "Then we need to create another opportunity for hidden talent to become visible," she replied immediately, already thinking about how Maria's insights could be integrated into TechFlow's operational improvements. "The question is not whether we have more undiscovered expertise, it is whether we are creating systems that allow it to emerge and contribute." The meeting with Maria Gonzalez took place the following week in Elena's office, with Mike present as both mentor and advocate for recognizing operational insights regardless of their source. Maria's presentation was polished and professional, demonstrating that analytical thinking flourished when given appropriate recognition and encouragement. Her recommendations for energy efficiency improvements and enhanced security protocols were immediately approved for implementation, continuing the pattern of practical solutions emerging from careful observation and systematic analysis. The Thompson family's evening routine had settled into a comfortable pattern that reflected their improved circumstances while maintaining the values that had sustained them through difficult times. Dylan's homework now included discussions with his father about real-world applications of analytical thinking, while Mike's work provided concrete examples of how careful observation and systematic analysis could produce meaningful improvements in people's daily experiences. Dylan's latest school project was a comprehensive analysis of lunch line efficiency that incorporated lessons his father had taught him about presenting solutions in ways that would be received positively by institutional authorities. Dad, I think I figured out how to explain my ideas so the principal will listen instead of thinking I am just causing trouble, Dylan announced one evening. His presentation materials spread across their kitchen table like a miniature version of his father's corporate presentations. Mike reviewed his son's work with pride that went beyond parental satisfaction to include professional respect for the quality of Dylan's analytical thinking. This is excellent work, son. You have identified real problems and proposed practical solutions that consider both efficiency and implementation challenges. The conversation represented the successful transmission of analytical skills from father to son, ensuring that another generation would approach problems with systematic thinking and persistence in finding better ways to accomplish necessary tasks. The holiday season at TechFlow Solutions carried special significance that year, with the annual celebration serving as an opportunity to recognize the contributions of employees whose work might otherwise go unnoticed. Elena's speech to the assembled staff included specific acknowledgement of operational improvements that had emerged from throughout the organization, with particular emphasis on the value of insights from people who were closest to actual work processes rather than theoretical management concepts. Mike found himself in the unusual position of being recognized publicly for contributions that had once been invisible and unacknowledged. The contrast with the previous year's celebration, when he had been cleaning up after everyone else while remaining completely unnoticed, was striking but not uncomfortable. He had earned his new status through demonstrated expertise and measurable results, making the recognition feel deserved rather than awkward or inappropriate. The holiday party conversation between Mike and Elena reflected how much their relationship had evolved from that first desperate encounter in the rain to become a professional partnership built on mutual respect and shared commitment to organizational excellence. A year ago, I was cleaning up after this party while feeling completely invisible, Mike observed, watching colleagues who now sought his input on operational challenges that had once been beyond his official purview. Elena's response captured the broader significance of Mike's transformation and its impact on TechFlow's organizational culture. A year ago, we were all missing opportunities to recognize expertise that could have been helping us solve problems we did not even realize we had. Your visibility has made all of us better at seeing potential where we had not thought to look before. The conversation acknowledged that individual success had produced systemic improvements that extended far beyond personal advancement. Mike's role at TechFlow had evolved beyond operational consulting to include responsibility for identifying and developing analytical talent throughout the organization. His experience of being overlooked despite obvious capabilities had given him unique insight into recognizing similar potential in others, making him an ideal advocate for merit-based advancement and inclusive approaches to problem solving. The program Mike developed for recognizing and nurturing analytical talent became a model for other companies in the Oakwood business community, with his presentations to professional organizations earning recognition for innovative approaches to workforce development and operational improvement. His transformation from invisible janitor to respected expert had become a case study in the practical benefits of looking beyond conventional assumptions about where expertise might exist. Dylan's academic performance had improved dramatically as his analytical interests found constructive outlets through his father's work and the school's growing recognition of his problem-solving capabilities. The principal who had once worried about Dylan's tendency to redesign institutional systems now sought his input on operational challenges, creating a positive feedback loop that encouraged rather than discouraged innovative thinking. The relationship between Mike and Maria Gonzalez had developed into a mentoring partnership that ensured the continuation of analytical excellence in TechFlow's facilities operations, while providing Maria with opportunities for professional development that matched her demonstrated capabilities. Her promotion to facilities coordinator reflected the same merit-based recognition that had transformed Mike's career, proving that excellence could be identified and nurtured regardless of initial position or conventional expectations. Elena's leadership of TechFlow Solutions had been permanently influenced by her experience with recognizing hidden talent and the organizational benefits that resulted from inclusive approaches to problem solving. Her presentations to business leadership conferences emphasized the practical value of listening to insights from throughout organizational hierarchies, with Mike's story serving as concrete evidence that expertise existed in unexpected places when leaders were willing to look beyond surface appearances. The final image of their story was not dramatic transformation or fairy tale resolution, but quiet satisfaction of a workplace where merit was recognized, potential was nurtured, and solutions emerged from careful observation and systematic analysis regardless of their source. Mike's weathered black clipboard had been joined by others throughout TechFlow, symbols of the analytical thinking that had become part of the company's culture and competitive advantage. Mike stood in his office looking out at the Oakwood skyline while reviewing operational reports that showed continued improvement in efficiency and cost savings throughout the organization. The numbers represented more than financial success. They reflected the human impact of recognizing potential, nurturing expertise, and creating systems where analytical thinking could flourish regardless of conventional assumptions about where valuable insights might originate. The story of Mike Thompson and Elena Richards had become part of TechFlow Solutions' identity, representing the company's commitment to merit-based recognition and innovative problem-solving that drew from the full range of employee expertise and experience. Their journey from that rainy night to measurable success demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful changes began with simple acts of kindness and willingness to see beyond surface appearances to recognize the potential that existed in unexpected places. In the quiet corridors of TechFlow Solutions, where Mike Thompson once toiled invisibly as a night janitor, a simple act of kindness on a rainy Friday night unraveled a profound truth about human potential and the unseen struggles we all carry. Mike, a single father grappling with grief and exhaustion after losing his wife to cancer, extended a hand to his CEO, Elena Richards, when she was at her most vulnerable, drunk, disheveled, and alone. What followed wasn't just a ride home. It was the spark that ignited a chain of events revealing Mike's hidden genius in logistics and operations, talents buried under the weight of necessity and overlooked by corporate hierarchies. Through his weathered clipboard filled with meticulous notes, Mike proved that expertise doesn't always wear a suit or sit in a corner office. His journey from mopping floors to presenting game-changing ideas before a skeptical boardroom shattered assumptions, silenced rumors of favoritism, and transformed a company's culture into one that values merit over titles. This story tugs at the heartstrings because it reminds us that life often hides its greatest treasures in the most unexpected places. Mike's quiet perseverance, fueled by love for his son Dylan, who inherited his analytical mind and dreamed big despite school reprimands, echoes the battles many of us face, choosing survival over passion, feeling invisible in a world that judges by appearances. Yet Elena's willingness to see beyond the uniform, to recognize wasted potential and fight for it amid office politics and doubt, shows the power of empathy and courage. It's a raw, emotional lesson. Kindness ripples outward, breaking barriers and restoring dignity. In a society quick to label and dismiss, Mike's rise inspires us to look deeper at ourselves and others, uncovering strengths we never knew existed. It teaches that true success isn't about climbing ladders alone, but lifting others up, creating spaces where hidden talents can shine and heal old wounds. What resonates with you most from Mike's incredible transformation? Have you ever felt overlooked or discovered untapped potential in someone unexpected? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them and spark a conversation. If this tale moved you and reminded you of life's beautiful surprises, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming narratives that uplift and inspire, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Together, let's celebrate the extraordinary and the ordinary.